Good morning. Welcome to the midweek edition of your breakfast on Leadership Television inside Nigeria. And on Inside Nigeria, we look at what some national papers are saying. Of course, we always have Nigeria's most influential newspaper leadership leading the pack. And on today's show is no different. My name is Winifred Webo, your host on the program. Without wasting much time, we go over to leadership newspaper. And of course, we know it's a developing story talking about the electoral bill amendment, which has been ongoing in both two houses of the National Assembly. And of course, yesterday they met to reconcile their their positions. And of course, the House of Reps caved into the Senate's decision initially, which has not gone well with some cross section of Nigerians. So we head up to leadership. Leadership says EFCC agrees Aero 5 for sorry. Today's leadership newspaper says ACF kicks as reps align with Senate on e-transmission manual backup. ACF, that is Arewa Consultative Forum, kicks as reps align with Senate on e-transmission manual backup. Amechi opposition leaders protest political deception coming from Wike, which is a kicker to that leading story on today's leadership, as well as some other papers we have on our lineup. The story continues on page 4 of leadership. ACF kicks as reps align with Senate on e-transmission manual backup. That leading story is also the leading story on Vanguard newspaper. Vanguard says 2027 reps cave in, back Senate on Electoral Act amendment. Vanguard leading story today, 2027 reps cave in, back Senate on Electoral Act amendment. Minority caucus stage walkout over adoption of manual electronic transmission of results. Police tear gas protesters at NANS. Labour, civil society demand mandatory e-transmission. Senate reduces election notice to 300 days to enable INEC adjust timetable. Amechi, opposition leaders merely grandstanding coming from the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike. We also have that same rider on leadership's cover story. We also look at the Guardian. Guardian has same leading story today. It says electoral reform crisis, 2027 elections take shape as APC majority prevails, legal tussle looms. The story continues on page 6 of The Guardian. Electoral reform crisis. 2027 elections take shape as APC majority prevails. Legal tussle looms. And underneath the leading story on today's The Guardian newspaper, we have highlights of provisions on political party primaries and key changes to election timelines. We'll just take it one after the other because it's still a developing story on some of the papers today. The big shift: indirect primaries deleted. The bill deletes direct-led procedure for retract for indirect primaries. Under the 2022 Electoral Act, indirect primaries had clear Congress rules, structural conventions, safeguards for democratic delegate selection. These have been removed, and a major shift in inter-party power. Consensus rule changed. If consensus pays 2022 Act revert to direct or indirect primaries, 2026B revert to direct primaries only. This narrows party flexibility and changes internal bargaining dynamics. We have direct primaries deregulated. The 2022 Electoral Act requires ward-based voting, participation of all registered members, equal opportunity guarantees, special congresses to ratify candidates with highest votes. In the direct primaries are to be conducted according to party guidelines. Statutory standards, minimum standards have been removed. What stays the same? INEC monitoring of primaries, written consent by all withdrawing aspirants in a consensus race, political appointees not eligible as voting delegates or aspirants. Federal High Court jurisdiction for pre-election elections votes. Candidates and party to be excluded from election for non-compliance with nomination procedures. What stays the same in this 2026 Electoral Act? The Guardian just gave a illustration of what to expect in this 2026 Electoral Act, which has been amended by both House of Representatives and Senate yesterday during their joint committee. And we from the Guardian, we also move to the next paper we have on our lineup with the same developing story, and that is Daily Sun. Daily Sun's leading story says elections may hold in December 2026, January. Of course, that is because of the move that the Senate moved yesterday to reduce the date for publication of election notices from 360 days to 300 days. As Senate moves to amend Electoral Act bill in response to post-clash with Ramadan Lenten season. So polls may hold in December 2026 and January. Elections may hold in December 2026 and January 2027. Leading story on Daily Sun newspaper. These are developing stories leading the papers that we just reviewed. Obi condemns tear gassing of protesters, insists on electronic transmission of election results. Also one of the a similar story to the leading story on today's Daily Sun newspaper. We move back to Leadership newspaper, where we'll take some of the other stories gracing the cover. Reverend Jesse Jackson was a great servant leader, Tinubu, in response to the demise of Jesse Jackson yesterday. Witness narrates how Owo Catholic Church terror attack was planned, executed. Pension fund assets rise by 4.94 trillion naira in 1 year. Bandits abduct 6 travelers on Naka Makodi Road. Health Ministry enforces 8-year tenure, orders immediate retirement of directors. Congress's Ondo APC chair attacked at party meeting. Governor Ayedatiwa denied sponsoring talks. And of course, in the cover of the Guardian, we saw the picture of the Ondo APC who was lying on the floor being attacked by APC during the meeting. Congress's Ondo APC chair attacked at party meeting. Governor Ayedatiwa denied sponsoring talks. We saw that picture, like I mentioned earlier, we saw that picture on the cover of the Guardian newspaper. On the business bus of leadership, Dangote demands National Forum on Power to rescue Nigeria's industries. Once no power, no growth. And above the masthead of leadership, El-Rufai spent second day in EFCC's custody. Ramadan begins today, says Sultan. Ramadan 2026 timing, day 1. That story continues on page 7 of leadership. Ramadan Kareem to all our Muslim faithfuls. We move to the page 2 of leadership, where we have page 3 of leadership. The second page we normally review every day on inside Nigeria in leadership newspaper, and that is our stand. Of course, our stand is on today's beginning of Ramadan and Lent season. It says, as Nigerians seek restitution. Today marks the beginning of 2 of the most significant periods in both Christianity and Islam, Lent and Ramadan. For a nation in urgent need of rebirth, this may seem symbolic, but it's actually auspicious. Almost the whole nation is on its knees before God in prayers and supplication for the forgiveness of sins and the promise to begin anew. It's important that we take this occasion seriously. This also explains the rarity of 2 editorials on this page. We actually have the editorials on Ramadan. Lent begins the journey of renewal. Ramadan reflects, renew, purify. The 2 editorials today on as Nigerians seek restitution. From our start, we move to the back page of leadership, where we have Wednesday column with Olufunke Baruwa. Today she's writing on elite rascality and the politics of impunity. Rascality and the politics of impunity. Today's Wednesday column with Olufunke Baruwa. We'll take quote from the column. Nigeria's political class routinely discovers the language of democracy, justice, and institutional integrity only when outcomes threaten elite comfort, positioning, and freedoms. Nigeria's way forward begins with reflecting the normalization of elite impunity and insisting through law, institutions, and civic pressure that public office is a duty, not an entitlement. These are quotes from today's Wednesday column with Olufunke Baruwa, Elite Rascality and the Politics of Impunity. We'll visit Ghana must go before we leave the back page. On the news, free Nnamdi Kanu or return him to Kenya, monarch test Tinubu. And of course, the Ghana must go is asking the monarchs, is Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya? Leave the question for the monarchs to answer as we conclude today's review of Leadership newspaper. For more, log into www.leadership.ng. We just move ahead to the next paper we want to review, and that is Daily Sun. Daily Sun says free Nnamdi Kanu or return him to Kenya. Southeast monarch test Tinubu. What we have on the Leadership's Ghana must go today. FAN, that is Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, bans car transactions in airports. NUPROC unveils gravimetric flow metering calibration facility to curb crude oil losses, booster revenue transparency. EFCC to secure remand order to detain El-Rufai till end of investigation. And that concludes review of front headline stories on Daily Sun. We move to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says Niger residents flee to Benin Republic as terrorists invade Bogu again. Niger residents flee to Benin Republic as terrorists invade Bogu again. Remi Tinubu seeks prayers for Nigeria as Lent Ramadan begin. Zamfara governor alleges exclusion from federal government support over party affiliation. Terrorists kill 4 in Kogi Plateau attacks. Experts raise alarm over drug use surge in Nigeria orders. Hoodlums invade, disrupt APC stakeholders meeting in Ondo. That is the story that is also gracing the cover of Leadership that we just read out. And on this particular story on The Guardian, we still also actually have the picture of the APC chairman on the floor. 1,000 Lagos police officers benefit from Sanwo-Olu's free eye care initiative. And that concludes review of The Guardian newspaper this Wednesday. For more, log into www.guardian.ng. We also move ahead to Vanguard to see other news on its cover. And it says Tinubu unveils Nigerian industrial policy, demands speedy implementation. Dangote signs $400 million equipment deal to fast-track refinery expansion. Armed men abduct 6 travelers on Makurdi-Naka Road, demand 100 million naira ransom. Nigeria orders ignore adjudgment. ECOWAS court laments. Nigeria orders ignore adjudgment. ECOWAS court laments. And we move ahead to the masthead of Vanguard. Manufacturers agri sector face up to 60% interest rate. Release Kanu or return him to Kenya. Southeast monarch text Tinubu. No equivalence between Kanu Igboho presidency. Lent Ramadan begin today. Tinubu, Trump, Harris, others mourn as U.S. civil rights leader Jesse Jackson dies at 84. May his soul rest in peace. And with that, we conclude. No, before we conclude, we still have another paper. It's not really a new paper. We've reviewed it, and that is Daily Independent. We've reviewed it twice before on this show. We have Daily Independent. Tinubu says, judge me by factories, jobs, not policy count. Unveils Nigerian Industrial Policy 2025. Charges stakeholders on speedy implementation. Says ADMI recognizes, believes in youth potential. Tunji Ojo says no capital allocation released to Interior Ministry in 2 years, while we had that of his counterparts in the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, where Professor Ali Pate saying that only 36 million naira has been released from a over 200 billion budgeted for capital expenditure. Meanwhile, Tunji Ojo says no capital allocation released to Interior Ministry in 2 years. UBA UK CEO unveils strategy to bridge Africa's $100 billion. Bandits kidnap seized in Benue, demand 100 million ransom. NROS announces phase and for invoicing EFCS. E-transmission of results. Reps betray public trust. Coming from PDP. Reps make U-turn. Okay, manual e-transmission of election results. Opposition works out over reversal. Real-time e-transmission of results. Divide Senate. Reenacts OK's electronic manual transmission. Amends electoral law for INEC to tinker with poll timetable. Only mandatory e-transmission of poll results risky. Sage. Jesse Jackson, civil rights leader, dies at 84, and that takes us to the two stories above the masthead of Daily Independent. Electoral Act amendments, police disperse protesters at National Assembly. FCT polls, INEC assures of real-time e-transmission of results. That brings to a close the review of front headline stories on Daily Independent this Wednesday. For more, log into www.independent.ng. Well, viewers, is on this note we've come to a close on today's show Inside Nigeria, where we review some national leading stories, including Nigeria's most influential. My name is Winifred Webo. I look forward to having you same time, same station for another fresh edition on the program tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word. Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert